welcome to Operators. I hope that by the end of this lesson, each and every one of you will be able to recall at least 5 math operators, at least 3 logical operators, and at least 4 comparison operators. Okay, so some background knowledge that we got to be solid on for this. We know data types. So especially our bread and butter data types, which are strings, like text, characters, that kind of thing, numbers, which includes decimals, like any kind of numeric representation, that's all the number data type, and Booleans, things that are true or false. The other thing that we want to be pretty solid on is the idea of expressions. Expressions are things that evaluate to values. You can evaluate to any value, but especially ones that evaluate to those bread and butter values, or bread and butter data types, strings, Booleans, numbers. Okay, so let's start with our math operators. So the first 4 you practically get for free. So if I have some number and some other number, then I can do a variety of different operations on those numbers. I can add them. I can subtract them. I can multiply them. And I can divide them. Those ones you're probably pretty solid on. Now, there are a couple of other ones that you might be less familiar with. So one of them is modulo, which is that. So modulo is the remainder from a division operation. So like 1 divided by 2, well, that's half, right? 1 modulo 2, since it didn't divide evenly, there's a remainder of 1. Why on earth could such a thing be possibly useful? Well, where you see modulos a lot is determining like whether or not something is even or odd, or something is every third element. Well, you can use the modulo operator to go, all right, well, if it divides evenly into something, then the remainder is 0. If it doesn't divide evenly into something, then it has some number other than 0. That's really where you see modulo a lot. And the other place that we see, the other kinds of math operations that we see are increment and decrement. And it shouldn't let me do either one of those because I used const to declare the variable. Yeah. So this does a kind of sneaky thing. So what some number does, or so what the plus plus does, is it goes, I want you to add 1 to this number, and I want you to change that number. So if I change this to let, now here's the other sneaky thing. Since I put it at the end, it still logs as 1, even though it's actually not. Here, I'll get rid of these other ones so we can see just that one. All right. So even though I changed it, like if I console log right after that, comes back as 2. You can actually change that by moving the plus plus in front of it. And now they're both 2. So we call that the like increment operator. As you might imagine, there's also a decrement operator, works the exact same way. So that is 7 different math operators for you. Plus, minus, multiply, divide, modulo, increment, decrement. Those are all operations that we can perform on numbers. Cool. Before I move on, say it to yourself out loud. What are 5 math operators? Yes, 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 yes. Oh, you got the other 2 also? Yes, yes. Add, subtract, divide, multiply, modulo, increment, decrement. And that's not just JavaScript. That's like pretty much every programming language has all of those operators in it. All right. We have 3 logical operators that I want you to be able to remember. It's more than that, but 3 is a good starting place. So the 3 that I definitely want you to be familiar with are and, or, and not. So how those work in JavaScript. If I have true and I have false, I can log the expression some value and some other value, which should come back as false. And means both things are true or truthy. Truthiness is kind of interesting. So something being true is literally the Boolean value true. Truthy is anything that could be considered true. So our truthy values include any non-empty string. I actually don't remember this one off the top of my head. I think zeros are falsy. Here's one way to find out. If I do 0, yeah, zeros are falsy. So any non-zero number, other truthy values, any object. Could be an empty object, doesn't matter. Still truthy. The Boolean value true. All those are truthy. There's also falsy values. Red. Falsy values are 0, null, undefined, an empty string. All of those are falsy. So if I go back here to this, all right, well, that's false. That will also happen if I do a truthy value and oh, neat. It tried to coerce it. Let me try a different one. Undefined. There we go. Ooh, that came back as undefined too. Interesting. What about null? Let me do that. Oh, that's interesting. It oh, I know what it's doing. So it is trying to do this. Well, that's something truthy, and so then it tries to do this one. Regardless, 0, undefined, null, false, doesn't matter. If we put that in a conditional, like an if statement, then we would expect that to not go into the true branch of that, but instead go to the else branch. All right, so that's and. Both of these need to be true or truthy. Or is a little bit different. Or will take either one of them can be true. Doesn't matter. And in this case, it's looking at this first value, which is the string something truthy, And since that is truthy, it just returns that right away. If I go back to making these kind of simple, like true and false, then it comes back as true, because at least one of them is true. So and is both of them are true, or is one of them has to be true. So those are our first two logical operators. Ampersand, ampersand, pipe, pipe, and, or. The other one I want you to be aware of is not. So not is an exclamation point. You pronounce it bang usually. So this would be bang some other value. So it's false. That means bang some other value is true. It's not. It just flips whatever that is. Same thing with some value. Some value is true. So if I flip it, it comes back as false. It didn't change this value. It operated on that and some outputting. So this is an expression. Didn't actually change it. Just an expression. You might have seen me do this a second ago where I did bang, bang. You can also do that, and that's really helpful if I have something truthy. You saw that when I log that, I get the string back. Well, if I really want that to be a Boolean value, I can negate it. So that's something truthy. It's showing up as false. I can also bang, bang it. And I get something truthy. I turn that into true. That's kind of a neat trick. Anyway, those are three logic operators that I want you to be familiar with. And, or, not. Ampersand, ampersand, pipe, pipe, the exclamation point. All right, and that is three logical operators. Uh-oh, since we're not looking at them, do you still remember them? Yes, yes, yes. And, or, not. Three logical operators. All right, lastly, four comparison operators. So this is comparing two different values. So if I have number 3, number 5, some number is greater than some other number. False. It is not. 3 is not greater than 5. Now, if I flip that around, it's true. So we can do greater than and less than. Those are two different types of comparison. We can also do equality. So nope, those are not the same number. If I make them the same number, it comes back as true. Cool. So we can compare stuff. 3 equals, greater than, less than. There's also greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. And let's see, any others I want to show you? Let's stick with those for just a sec. I want to talk about a special case with double equals versus triple equals. But our comparison operators, equality, greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. And so like some examples of where this actually gets used. Checking whether two things are the same thing, that one happens a lot. You can also check that they're not the same thing. This is using that same logic operator. So are these two things the same? If so, do this. We do that a lot. We also do the opposite of that a ton. Are these two things not the same thing? And then even like the greater than and less than things, maybe there's a character limit, 144 characters in a tweet, or used to be. Then we might say my tweet dot length is less than or equal to 144. And that might be some check we do to make sure that something isn't too long. Or we might check that something is longer than 0. These are all kinds of like comparisons that you do day in, day out. All right, so I did want to mention the difference between double equals and triple equals. This is probably like one of the most contentious things in JavaScript. JavaScript as a language was written in like 10 days in 1995. And so since it was done very quickly, there were some corners that were cut. One of them was double equals. In most languages, that's the double equals is the normal way that we compare stuff. The problem is that this looks at different values. It doesn't look at the types. And here's where that was intended to be used. So if I say, are these two the same thing? Come on. So they're not the same thing. They are the same thing. All right. That's all well and good. That totally makes sense. It also works if this one is the string 3. That also comes back as true. And you know what? That was as intended. Like whether it's the string 3 or the number 3, who cares? It's 3. The problem comes when it's, so like what it's doing there is called coercion. All right, I check the values, they're the same. Can I coerce the data types to be the same also? Can I make these both strings or both numbers or something like that? And like that all sort of checks out. The problem is that there are all kinds of issues where that coercion does not work the way that you think. Down to something being on the left side or the right side makes a difference as to whether or not it comes back true or false. It's like a pretty thoroughly broken thing. So the fix that they came up with was triple equals. So if I triple equals those, that's false now because they're the same value, but they're not the same data type. So triple equals checks that the type is the same as well as the value being the same. And in general, you want to use the triple equals version and the equivalent not to that version of not and that version of equality. So throughout, like just in your programming career, I think that there are, I'm like the last holdout for like a couple good use cases for double equals, but pretty much the whole JavaScript world has moved on and just does triple equals for everything. You probably should too. All right, and so that is a few different ways that we can compare things. Being greater than, less than, greater than, equal to, less than or equal to, equal, not equal. Like if you're looking for a vocab differentiation between these, we call this equality and this strict equality. So we have equality, inequality, strict equality, strict inequality. Strict is same value, same type. Cool. So 5 different math operators, 3 different logical operators, 4 different comparison operators. So let's take a second. Let's see if you can do it. Can you recall these 12 different operators? I'm going to give you a sec to do that very thing. Let's take 1 minute. 1 minute, recall all 12 of these. Go for bonus points if you can, because there's more. 50 seconds. 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 and goal. So 5 math operators. Did you remember addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, modulo, increment, decrement? Logical operators. Did we get and, or, not? For our comparison operators, greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, equality, inequality, strict equality, strict inequality. Nice. I knew you had it in you. One other thing that I want to mention about operators real quick, this is bonus, is 3 different categories of operator: unary, binary, and ternary. So an operator operates on an operand. That's how the vocab for that works. In unary, we're only working on one operand. So examples are not. There's only one value that we need for not. It's the same thing with increment and decrement. So those are, we call those unary operators. Binary operators are most of them. So we have something like that, something like that, something like that. Something with where the operator is in between 2 different operands. Those are binary operators because there's 2 things. There's also a ternary operator. There's only one. And it is some value. If that statement is truthy, then you evaluate this expression. Otherwise, you evaluate this expression. It works exactly like an if-else statement, but it's a little bit compact. And since it's an expression, not a control structure, you can also use that to, like, a ternary expression will like evaluate to a value, which if statements don't, which is kind of cool. You want to see it in action? Check this out. So I can take some kind of logical statement here and turn that into a ternary statement. If these are the same numbers, then have the string yay, otherwise have the string boo. And we can assign that to a variable, which is kind of cool. That makes it a little bit more flexible than like an if-else statement. And you can console log the message, and it comes back boo, because they're not the same thing. If I change that, it turns into yay. All right, so I hope that you are rock star on operators, operands, and all that such in JavaScript, and I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.